Hello everyone, my name is Kate Ross and I am one of the contributing authors to Spectrum Women Walking to the Beat of Autism. As part of our 1-year anniversary Ask the Authors Q&A, today I am going to be talking about autistic burnout. So we had a question from an anonymous reader in the US asking, what is burnout? How does it differ from depression, and what are the causes and symptoms? So I'm going to talk briefly about my personal experience of autistic burnout, which, to be honest, I'm still recovering from. So my burnout happened a little over 2.5 years ago. It was triggered by an incident at my previous job, and I think coincidentally, it came about 4 months after my professional validation or diagnosis of autism. So while it didn't have a direct link, I think there was a subconscious process running in the background, if you will. So yeah, that's a little bit about my experience of burnout, just to lay a little bit of foundation. So the elements of it that I'm going to be discussing today come from a list that our autistic brother-in-arms, Kieran Rose at the Autistic Advocate, put together. I'll be sure that we include a link to his article because it's absolutely fantastic. And so without further ado, one of the first elements of burnout is a diminished ability to self-regulate one's emotional state. So, in short, that means crying more easily, losing one's temper more easily, and apologizing excessively for both of those things. So, for me, if I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, the tears seem to come a lot more readily. And while it's gotten better over time and with medication, it's still not totally gone. And being short-tempered, I really have to do my best to not lose my temper when I'm at work. So unfortunately, that ends up inadvertently being taken out on my husband. But thankfully, we have a good relationship and a good foundation of understanding of each other's needs. So if I do lose my temper when it's not even his fault, once I am able to cool down, I am able to apologize to him and say, look, I'm sorry, it wasn't you, it was XYZ. So that is a cornerstone of autistic burnout, and it's different from depression in that the tears may be spontaneous, but it's linked to the event or circumstances that led to the depression, if that makes sense. So on to the next. Part 2 is an increase in executive dysfunction. Now, for me, that is just task inertia, in that I know things need to get done and I just cannot muster the energy to do it. So in the time that I was off work after this incident that triggered my burnout, so I was off work for a total of 6 months, and it was around month 3 that I realized that what I was dealing with was actually burnout. It was down to the fact that there would be a pile of dishes next to the sink that needed washing, and I just could not bring myself to do it. Sometimes it would even be self-care oriented, that I would be so burnt out and so inert that I wouldn't even feed myself, which is crazy. It would come to a point where it'd be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it's physical pain in my stomach that is caused by the fact that I hadn't eaten lunch. So it's not always about not caring about doing things. So when one is depressed, it may be a bit more of what's the point in doing any of these activities. Whereas with executive dysfunction as part of being autistic, it's almost like the brain and body can't connect, in that the brain knows that you need to do whatever, whether it's self-care or maintaining cleanliness around the house, or it could be any number of things, but you just physically not being able to do any of these tasks that are required of you. Okay, so element number 3 for me is an increase in demand avoidance. Now, for me, with demand avoidance, it's being told to do something that I would have done on my own anyway, but because someone's told me I need to do it, then I ain't gonna do it. Okay, so for instance, having to, in the time that I was signed off, I needed to renew my sick note when it was coming to expire, because I just did not feel ready to go back to work. So it started off as like 3-week increments, and I had to keep renewing it, so it wasn't just a block of 6 months off the trot. But even needing to phone the GP surgery to get my note renewed, I would become demand avoidant. I knew I needed to do it, but I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to talk to anyone on the phone, and I didn't want to have to go through the palaver of having to explain myself again, having to say why I need my sick note continued. I would end up putting it to the absolute last minute, or the last possible day to get it renewed. And there was no reason for that, but because I knew I needed to do it, and I just could not bear having to go through those motions again, I would put it off. So I don't know that demand avoidance really enters depression much. It may to a degree, but certainly not to the extent that autistics can present as demand avoidant. So element number 4, and possibly one of the top ones for me certainly lately, is a decrease in one's ability to effectively communicate. And you just saw an inadvertent example of that right there. Knowing what you want to try to say, but the words don't come. Even doing this video, I have had many false starts. I can't tell you how many times I have started and stopped and started and stopped because it just kept going wrong. Now, it's not so much of an inconvenience when doing a video, but it's a major problem when you're trying to communicate at home with family members, or at work, or even just in the general public. Ordering food at a restaurant, or doing grocery shopping and not being able to communicate what it is that you need. Which that kind of ties into the 5th element, so I'll kind of talk about both of these together, is an increased presence of brain fog and memory loss or memory difficulties. So for me, I feel that my difficulties with verbal communication certainly stem from there just being a perpetual fog mentally, and struggling to push through it. Sometimes I feel like, for the Americans, it feels like moving through molasses, or for my British audience members, treading through treacle. where it just feels like it's a struggle and you're trying so hard to communicate what it is you're trying to, but you can't see through the fog. You can't move through this example again. Trying so hard. And it's not just a case of forgetting your words. It's almost like there's a misfiring in your brain that you know what you're trying to say, but you just can't go through the Rolodex of words in your head, if you will, to try and find what it is you're trying to say. And I think, if anything, that is the element that I have really been the most frustrated with, because I know I am an articulate and, reasonably intelligent individual. I can communicate myself very well through written word. So if anything, when I'm at work, if I'm having difficulties with communicating, I'll send an instant message via Skype to one of my colleagues or to my manager. Or if I'm trying to communicate verbally, just say, please be patient with me. I'm really struggling with my words today. So yeah, that's the biggest component that I've struggled with a lot since being burnt out. And in terms of it being different from depression, I've been depressed and I've just not felt this way before. There wasn't so much a fog as a black cloud, and it's different in that the cloud, you feel like at some point it will lift, whereas the fog just feels like it's always there and very difficult to shut off and turn away. So yeah. So thank you to our anonymous reader who submitted that question. I hope that has in part answered your query. If you haven't yet obtained your copy of Spectrum Women, Walking to the Beat of Autism, it is available from major book retailers. And as I said before, I'll be sure that we include the link to Kieran Rose's brilliant article about autistic burnout for you to find out more about it. Okay? Thank you so much for watching, and take care, everyone. Bye.